greetings, everyone, and welcome to a very special online event today. It's called Discover the Path of the Mystical Medium. Channel the wisdom of great mystics for expanded intuition, guidance, and healing. My name is Stephen Dinan. I'm the founder and president of the Shift Network, and I'm always thrilled to be exploring new frontiers right alongside with you, which is part of why I created the company. And today we're very excited to have our featured teacher. Her name is Karen Frances McCarthy. She's a medium and author and mentor, and she's really helping to marry two fields, one of deep mysticism and some of the pioneering spiritual realizers in history with the ability to communicate with the other side. And I think you're going to find some really valuable insights in how those two things can come together and really open up a space that is all really about transformation for yourself and for others. So Karen, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Oh, I'm delighted to be here, Stephen.
Great. Well, I want to let everyone know up front, we're going to have this hour together and we've got some great stuff planned. And we're going to have a brand new program with Karen called Discover the Path of the Mystical Medium that we'll share more about towards the end of the hour. So more to come for all who want to go further. So Karen, I'd love for you to start our time together in this hour with a little bit about your journey, which I know is a fascinating one, leading into your role as a mystical medium now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I was started out really as a political journalist and diehard skeptic, recovering Catholic, to be honest. I was educated, raised by nuns, educated by nuns. And so by the time I kind of got to my teens, I'd really had it and went off quite happily into a world of skepticism and atheism, and ended up as a journalist. I was a war correspondent. I was in Iraq. I covered politics. I grew up in Ireland, you can probably tell from the accent. And we're quite happily going along like this until one afternoon, out of the blue, I got a phone call to say my fiance had dropped dead of a sudden massive heart attack, 41, in New York City. I was actually in the down south in Virginia at the time, because I was working on a book which was part of the Northern Ireland peace process at the time when I got this phone call. And what has started happening was, after I got that phone call, within a couple of days, all sorts of strange things started happening. I was in this huge, big, hulking house in Virginia, house sitting, when electronics started turning on, the bed started creaking when I was in it. All sorts of things were touching me. And of course, the first thing you do when you're skeptic is you think you're having a breakdown, which is what I thought. But it continued. One thing led to another. It was one of those really synchronistic sort of journeys where I was led from where I was to the local, believe it or not, Catholic priest, who sort of started helping me get into a place where I could start to think maybe there is more to consciousness than what I had perceived. And this led from there. It led to the Edgar Cayce Center down there in Virginia. I was in the area, like I've called it the Area 41 of the afterlife. The Monroe Institute was there, the Edgar Cayce Center was there, the Norfolk Spiritualist Church was there, the School of Perceptual Studies at Virginia University is there. It was all, I just happened to be there, and it was all there. And I just sort of went around and this discovering, talking to people, and the experiences continued until finally, the penny dropped and I realized it was my partner communicating with me. Now, as a child, I would wake up and see spirits at the end of the bed, and I would have all of these sort of experiences as a child. But by the time I got to my teen years, I had no interest in that. So that had all stopped. But the minute I just realized what was going on and accepted what was going on, then everything changed, because then other people's loved ones were coming and visiting and giving me messages and whatnot. And a few people encouraged me to really do something with it, because it was actually proving to be very, very helpful. This ability to be able to describe somebody's mother who had died by suicide, and to be able to prove that she was with me with very detailed facts, and then how she felt. It was really very helpful to other people. So I was encouraged to do it. So I ended up making this very hard turn from like skepticism and political journalism into this world, this very, very spiritual world of mediumship, from one extreme to the other, really, I suppose. And then I just sort of decided, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to step into other people's grief and other people's vulnerabilities. I better do this responsibly and well. And so I went and I studied and trained at the Arthur Findlay College in England and studied grief and bereavement counselling, got certified in that to make sure I was able to be ethical and responsible and sensitive in dealing with other people. And that just went off that way, you know.
Well, it's quite a story, and I mean, difficult circumstance, obviously losing your partner, but I wonder if you can share a little bit more about that pivot you made from the kind of deep skepticism that is not part of reality to all of a sudden the portal opening where people are able to communicate from the other side. Maybe share a little bit about what seemed to happen in you to open that channel.
Yeah, I've often said, people say, and a friend of mine, and actually I've talked about this in my book, Till Death Don't Us Part, which I believe we're offering the first chapter of it. So a lot of that story is in that as well, if people are interested. But a friend of mine had said at one point, I said, people are saying they're seeing these signs. I've heard this thing about people seeing signs, a butterfly or this. And a friend of mine said to me that the things that were happening to me were so radical that a friend of mine said to me, you're not getting signs, you're getting burning bushes, which is what it took for me relentlessly to be able to get my head around the fact. Because it's quite a radical departure from we're here, we're flesh and bone, we die, and that's it, to now all of a sudden trying to understand the nature of consciousness, which clearly continues, and then trying to understand what it is exactly that. And I'm like doing a doctorate, as I've mentioned before, but I'm doing a doctorate now studying consciousness and ghost literature. I really did a massive amount of reading. So on top of all of the experiences that were happening, sort of waking up in the middle of the night with somebody banging against the bed and hopping up to realize there's nobody in the room, tearing out and running out of the house, these sorts of things, to getting from that point to actually recognizing that this is somebody just trying to get my attention and that there's absolutely nothing to be afraid of, and that the important thing is to stay here and be present with it and understand what wisdom is trying to be shared with me. I don't know if that answers your question, but really it was a lot of helpful people, I will say. I bumped into a lot of helpful people, as I mentioned, there in Virginia. But it was in talking to a lot of people and being very, very open-minded and open to other people's experiences, because it's very easy to be a skeptic. So I had to sort of really be willing to be open to listen without judgment, and then to start looking and exploring the experiences as what was happening without trying to rationalize them away, to just being open, which it took quite a bit of effort, I have to say, and then after being open, but once you become open to it, I mean, this is the beauty of it. Once you accept the possibility, then everything just blows open.
Have you found that you're sort of tend to over time work with particular collaborators on the other side in a way, like your deceased partner did he become part of the process of how you were able to access other beings as well?
Well, I think he was part of the process is in as much as his persistence to get my attention and to burn bushes, as our mutual friend had said, was the thing that really was so relentless. I couldn't steer away from the path. Probably had they fallen off, had they stopped, I might have given up on it, but they didn't. They were relentless until that point of awakening. So I do think he was very key to that. Strangely enough, actually, my father has since passed. He passed 6 years ago. And my father, I have noticed, who was in no way a spiritual person, my father actually is the one who helps me. Now, my father was an Olympic swimming coach. So my father was all about teaching people, being open, exploring, and teaching people to be the best they could be. So it stands to reason, I do feel now, that my dad, so when I sit down to work with a client, for example, I'm aware of my father's presence.
That's really cool. I love that he's extended his coaching skills to
Yes.
the arena. So let's talk. So there's the first foundation, it sounds like, with the mediumship that really got established was the more evidential aspect, being able
Yes.
to really be clear that you're transmitting something that is true and real and therefore catalyzes change in people. And maybe speak a little bit about how then over time another octave starts to open up, where it's not just about providing evidence, but it's in some ways more about like a kind of a spiritual realization.
Yeah, I think the evidential part of it, I've always felt that what's very important in the evidential part of it. So for me, it's not just about, oh, here's a bunch of facts, or I've got a woman sitting here with a red hat, or, it's really more than that. But as a writer, I really do strive to really be able to breathe life into the person's story. And so for me, it became having this very deep curiosity about the people on the other side. I say, it's not no geography, but you know what I mean, people in the spirit form. I just became very, very curious about their story. So it became for me more than just, here's a bunch of facts. Here, I can prove this is your mother because she's got curly hair, she's wearing this, she's got this ring, these sorts of details. Into really being able to explore the story, to be able to really give that person voice, which has actually proved to be immensely healing for both sides in my experience over the last number of years of doing this. And so I do feel that the person's story and the healing possibilities in mediumship became very, very important to me, because I really feel all forms, there's lots and lots of forms of mediumship. Evidential mediumship is one, but at their essence, it's all about healing, it's all about awakening, and it's all about oneness, which is where it sort of starts to then veer into mysticism and starts to open that sort of sense of oneness and connection. And so I feel that when we start to recognize mediumship as something much bigger than just giving messages, and we start to be able to see within it is the experience of intrinsic oneness, the experience of interconnectedness, the experience of unconditional love. And these are elements that I started to sort of push out into with my mediumship. I still obviously do a straightforward evidential mediumship, but I do bring curiosity and story and healing and these sort of deeper elements to it, because I do feel that to me is fascinating. That's fascinating. It's this whole world. And we have such tiny understanding of the power of what's there beyond our little physical forms, And I always say there's so much power there and so much wisdom there and so much imagination and possibility there that we can't even begin to understand it, because it's just so far beyond our frame of reference. So I find that very exciting, really exciting, that, my goodness, how much there is there to explore while we're here, how much there's going to be to explore when we get there. I just fascinate. It's just endless. So for me, it's like being put into the sort of the world's greatest library, VR library or something, to experience everything you possibly can.
Well, I love that spirit of adventure. And so let's talk a little bit more explicitly about the different mystics and how connecting with the sort of the worldview, the beings themselves, even the practices of mystics can really enhance our experience of mediumship and its potential.
Yeah, I think mysticism becomes this academic thing. There's a lot of study in academia with mysticism, within religion and mysticism. What I really love about mysticism is not just the mystics, the inspiration of the mystics, but the practices of the mystics. And I do feel this is where, when you were talking about this initially, where I feel there's a big overlap between mediumship, between particularly sort of trance mediumship, the altered states of mediumship, even an element of channeling, and the mystical states. This is where it starts to blend together, and we start to really have these great enlightening moments and these great moments of awakening. And so, the mystics have been the rebels of every religion known to man through time. The Buddha had come from a Hindu background and went in search of something and came, and we arrived at Buddhism. We have the Sufis coming out of Islam. So we have all of these. The radicals. I love the idea that the mystics are radicals, the ones, the really free thinkers. Since the dawn of time, the mystics have been the free thinkers, and the people who are really into experiencing the depths of connection with the divine, with the oneness. And there's an amazing, when we're in this course, we talk about different mystics from the Buddha all through medieval time up to current time. And there's this thread of commonality between them all in all cultures where they weren't even interacting. And yet the human condition and the human spirit is arriving at a lot of the same ideas of pantheism, of divinity, of the divinity within, of the interconnection of unconditional love and the power of that. And it's existed even in poetry, the transcendentalists with the romantic poets. And so I feel that when we're looking at mysticism, I feel like it's really important to take the mysticism. So it's not just a study of the mystics and their lives and their teachings, but it also opens up an opportunity to start learning practices where we can start to find where they were inspired, the ecstatic states that they experienced teaching the practices that allowed them to get there, so that we're able to blend not only their knowledge and their wisdom, but also have the ineffable experience that they have. I think it's really fascinating, because we can only go so far in understanding mysticism from reading their teachings. Mysticism is all about having the ecstatic experience. So to me, that's a key part of mysticism. So that's why I'm really fascinated. And so when we're in this course, I've got 7 different mystics that we're going to talk about, 7 different mystics. And each week, there's a practice designed to sort of access their wisdom, the experience of their wisdom, so that everybody has a different type of experience. Because some people will love and really resonate with one mystic. Somebody might love Rumi, somebody else might love Hildegard von Bingen, you know. And so it's an opportunity to really have those very, very deep and profound mystical experiences. So we're engaging not just the mind, but they radiate within the heart.
So it's almost like each mystic has kind of pioneered certain pathways or opened up certain ways of being, and then it's you're walking in their footsteps.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how that might apply with one. I know you mentioned Edgar Cayce and the sort of the Virginia. This is the epicenter of all
the Area 51. Yeah.
Area 51. And maybe how have you worked with Edgar Cayce as an archetype pioneer and mystic as a way to inspire your own path?
So the thing I love about Cayce is that Cayce was a very, very, very powerful healer in the late 1800s, early 1900s in America. Now, he was a psychic healer, but he was able to absorb wisdom. He was able to sort of, this is in his bio, he was able to sleep on a book and absorb the wisdom of that book, wake up with it in the morning. And he came from this little farm out in Kentucky, but he had this natural and very, very powerful ability to actually heal. And what Cayce would do is he would go into a trance state. He called it this, he would call it going to sleep. We actually now understand it to be an altered state of awareness, moving into that mystical or ecstatic state between the physical and the spirit world. So he became known as the sleeping prophet, because he would go to sleep and he would have these visions in his sleep with cures, with prognoses for himself. He lost his voice at one point, and a hypnotist put him into hypnotic state. When he was in that state, he received information to be able to cure his own laryngitis, his own problem with his own voice box. So he was able to come back out and tell the hypnotist, this is what I need to do, put me back into a hypnotized state, and tell me, make these suggestions. And he actually cured his own voice in that way. And so as word got out about, I mean, he's got a beautiful hospital, he's got a whole center now down in Virginia Beach. But as he began to work more and more, people heard about him, and sort of coming into the early war years as well. People were hearing about Cayce, and they would write to him, and they would ask him for cures and for diagnosis. And he would go into the trance state. And he had an assistant who would write down all of the information that he would start to speak in this trance state about the cure or about the diagnosis for these people. And so this is why I love the healing aspect. He's very versatile. He's got quite a lot of different strings to his bow. But the healing aspect of his work is something I absolutely love. And what I love about the Cayce healing is the fact that we move into a great, beautiful stillness of mind. We move into a beautiful sense of connection with the divine, whatever that is to you, and move into that state of connection, and then that openness to surrender to that power, to allow the power to decide what healing needs to be done or what needs to be. So our mind is out of it. So we're not sort of diagnosing or coming up with what we think we should be saying. We surrender to this beautiful ecstatic state in the altered states, which I lead people into, obviously, you know, and we teach them how to move into that state. And within that state, it's a very, very, very peaceful state. We just open the heart to receive the healing. And sometimes the healing can just be very, very profound, where you could have an ache, a pain, stress, anxiety, or something, and yourself, from just being in that state, could find reprieve from it, or find healing in it. But the other thing that's beautiful about it is that you can offer it. When you're in that state, you can then offer that healing to another, always surrendering to the power and the respect for the spirit world, so that allowing them to decide where the healing needs to go and what healing needs to be done for the person, your loved one, or whoever's sitting in front of you, or whoever's on the other side of the world, because obviously no time and no geography.
Well, I love the practical healing dimensions of cases. So you take the oneness and the connection with spirit and turn it into very specific interventions to help to shift things here. So that's a great archetype to work with. Do you want to lead us in a experiential to give a flavor for how you can go deeper with that and begin to take that archetype into our own connecting with the other side?
Yeah, so what I was thinking we might be able to do is to move into the altered state, just to sort of experience that sort of stillness. And then what we could do is, Cayce worked with an idea called ideals. And I think this is a nice way of working personally with something that's needed in the life at the moment. So Cayce's ideals are really qualities. It's about finding a quality that maybe you have within that you're not aware of, but something that you can really bring forth into your life. So we'll just work with moving into the healing power, inspired by Edgar Cayce, moving into the altered state for healing, or into the mystical states for healing, as inspired by Edgar Cayce, and then just follow very gently along. But what I would say is what's important here with this is that we really surrender the mind. And so it's always really important to remember with all sorts of mystical work that it is dark to the mind and radiant to the heart. So I would say, as we're moving into this stillness, if you start finding your mind is moving, just release the thought, just move your focus back to the breath. Just the simple act of breathing will help us sort of stay in this altered, very, very still altered state of awareness. So let's just take a breath. And let's just come together, just closing the eyes, just taking a very still breath and just allowing the breath to bring us back into the moment. And letting tomorrow fall away, letting yesterday fall away, and just bringing our awareness to the simple act of breathing. Allowing that breath gently guide us into the fullness of this present moment, allowing it to guide us now within, or within is the divinity within, our inner spirit that connects us to the divinity of all that is. And should the mind wander, just release the thought, just gently moving your focus away from that thought and back to the breath, just to help to bring us into a simple moment of complete presence. And in the presence is the essence of all that is. Still in body and still in mind. And bringing your awareness now to your heart center, and there noticing a spark of light, or sensing that spark of energy. And with each breath, just gently allowing that light, that energy to expand so that it is filling your body on the breath, pouring out now beyond your small physical form, so that you are sitting in the radiant light and the power of your spirit. And on the breath, allowing the spirit to continue to expand into its infinite and eternal form, form from which you came and to which you will return. And moving now stepping out of the body, expanding into the power of your spirit, freely flowing or floating or moving into this endless light. And beyond this light, an even greater light that fills the universe, all dimensions and all time. The light of the divine, of the one, the Tao, the Brahman. Just allowing yourself blend with this light so that the light of the divine within and the light of the one become one. Gently flowing through this space, surrendering thought, surrendering the self to unity with the one of all that is. One in the power and one in the spirit. And as you move through this space, feeling its harmony, its warmth, floating freely, becoming aware of the subtle energy of healing spirits beginning to surround you. Not trying to see, just being one with them, one with the divine, absorbing their power and their presence into your being and yours into theirs. Being here now without beginning and without end. Feeling the love and compassion that they freely share. Opening the heart to receive the healing that they offer you, allowing it flow to you, to wherever it is needed most. Surrender and receive. Surrender and be. Allowing this healing to flow through you, body, mind, and spirit. Healing the wounds of old, the wounds of the ages. Healing those ailments and those pains. Healing all suffering. Allowing all of this healing energy and love and compassion to flow to you and through you, to where in their wisdom they know it is needed most. And now, as they continue to envelop you in this loving kindness and this compassion and this eternal flow of healing, They will impart one word, one ideal, one quality that you have within you may have overlooked, to bring with you and forward with you to help guide your life. Don't think, don't reach. Dark to the mind and radiant to the heart. Just open the heart to receive. One word. Now. It may have come as a sound or a feeling or a color, but just take that with you. You may not understand it exactly now, but hold that and cherish that. You can sit and reflect more later. But for now, in gratitude, thanking this healing team, thanking yourself, and taking this gift back with you. So we move back through the white space, back from eternity, back into the room in which you sit, settling back into the body safely on the chair. Inhaling deeply, aware now of the sounds, smells, your weight within the gravity of the world. And holding your gift very gently on the breath, you can open your eyes.
Beautiful. You have a wonderful quality to your voice that's very soothing and opening. So thank you for that. And I'm sure we all got deeper messages and qualities and ideals that we can work with. And one question kind of emerges for me at the tail end of that is like, how much do you feel that it's important to just be working with the pattern or the archetype of a mystic like Edgar Cayce versus like connecting specifically with that soul? Is there a value to both at different times or
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what's really important with working with all of the mystics is that their fundamental message has always been there is no self, there is no division, and that in these really, really deep mystical states, there is just oneness. So the soul, the archetype of Cayce, is present within the healing power.
That's great. And so how might you then approach, so they're already absorbed in the field of oneness. So in a way, differentiating them as guides or souls may be less important.
I think we're all absorbed into the oneness. We have this illusion of self. And I do feel that the power of when we work with a mystic like Cayce, and we can just open ourselves up to being connected and being part of that oneness, we get to flow in that, eternal and infinite consciousness from which our individual little consciousness arises like waves. Thich Nhat Hanh talks about this a lot. We arise like waves out of the sea of consciousness. And so I do feel that all of that power, the power that Cayce had arose within him from that stream.
Mm-hmm.
And so that when we step into that stream, that same power that arose for him, he is part of, but it is now arising for us as well.
Well, I know you're going to be going into 7 different mystics and mystical paths in your upcoming program, but maybe give us a little flavor of how you might approach a different mystic like Rumi in a wholly different way and different kinds of practices to help open that pathway in consciousness.
Yeah. So what I tried to do was come up with sort of variations and different practices that different people respond to. So Rumi, I love as a writer. I love Rumi because he writes all those beautiful couplets. So with Rumi, for example, we'll work with the music. The music becomes very important in a lot of these mystics. So with Rumi, we work with the music of the whirling dervishes. So Rumi is, the whirling dervishes. I'm sure you've seen them. They've got these big skirts and they whirl. So Rumi is the one who raised his arm first in the world and started whirling. And the movement brought him into the ecstatic state from where he received this wisdom, and then would sit and write these beautiful couplets of love. And so what we do when we're working with Rumi is we work with the music and we work with the movement and sort of moving ourselves into. So we sat in an altered state there with for Edgar Cayce, in a very passive way of moving into the healing energies, the healing states. With Rumi, we'll use movement and music to whirl into it so that the movement brings this energy with it and to help us establish that connection, that and touch those mystical or those altered states of awareness, so then we can sit with that afterwards and take the pen and very gently then just allow ourselves to be moved by that inspiration to write some couplets or to write some words. And it comes in an inspired state. And you'd be absolutely astonished when I ask people just to write a couplet before we do the practice and then to write another couplet after the practice. It is like night and day. The power that comes after the practice is just beautiful. I mean, the words and the poetry is just beautiful. And people who are not poets at all have no aspirations to be a poet, but you'll find yourself moved into a state of inspiration that then can then be, in that class, we express it then in the writing. And people, I mean, I've had people actually have, write up their things and print them out and gift them to people in little frames. It's just beautiful things can come out of that state.
How does that process of then opening to these qualities or capacities, like writing couplets that you might not normally have access to, how does that then translate into some of the more evidential mediumship kind of function that we were talking about before?
Well, I think that with mysticism, I think that, when we're working with, say, Meister Eckhart, we're working with wisdom and we receive the wisdom and then we can speak it. And then that wisdom can have profoundly healing qualities for the self and for others. And so we work with it in these different ways. I don't think evidential, I feel like trance mediumship is more the sort of speed with mysticism, because we are moving into these very, very, very deep states of awareness where we are opening up to the power of all that is to be expressed through us in different ways, whether it's prayer, whether it's speaking, in the different ways that we'll be exploring in this class and over the course of the 7 weeks. So I feel for me, mediumship is really very close to mysticism, because I don't feel like you can really, at its deepest and most profound levels, mediumship is really making that connection to the power of all that is, which is what mysticism is doing. It's really bringing us into a deep sense of connection with the divine.
I wonder if you could share a little bit more about the process of that, the receptivity and opening that and being able to flow with your inner guidance, since I know that kind of fluid receptivity is a lot about sort of opening the mediumship pathway and how the mystics can inform that.
Yeah, so I feel like any work that we do to move beyond the mind into these ineffable states, which is where the spirit resides, which is where the Tao resides, which is where the power of all our loved ones are in spirit form. Anything that we do that can bring us into that power, to bring us into those altered states where we are receptive to information, to details, to anything from the unseen world, is going to support all forms of mediumship. Evidential mediumship, where we're actually talking to the dearly departed relative of somebody in front of us, or into the healing mediumship, which is what we do with Cayce, or into the spoken word mediumship, or into writing. And I'm a firm believer that writing all comes from these altered states. Good writing, you can tell, comes from having been in this altered state and then accessing this power. And then it's almost like we open ourselves up to receive. We open the door, and then this power, this inspiration, this wisdom, this healing begins to flow through us. And the benefit of that, or how that really manifests in our daily lives, is that sense of unconditional love, which people describe in near-death experiences, which again is standing in that space between worlds, where we feel that ineffable quality of unconditional love. We know it exists. We experience our fundamental and intrinsic interconnection with all that is. That changes our entire perspective on the world and how we move through it and how we live in it. And the sort of compassion and kindness that we can offer the world, which then the world meets us with. And so I feel like we can actually then start to live in a calmer, in a more harmonious place in a place of greater inspiration, in a place of greater, so it sort of takes away the fear of death, it takes away the fear of takes away loneliness, takes away all of these things that sort of plague contemporary life just by that sense of presence.
Beautiful. Well, Karen, you're just a fountain of inspiration, and I want to spend some time now talking more explicitly about how people can go deeper with you, since clear that you've really gone to the depths of these practices and can really transmit a quality of being that infuses a spiritual awakening and connection with the other side. So the program that Karen's going to be teaching is called Discover the Path of the Mystical Medium. Channel the universal wisdom of 7 great mystics for expanded intuition, healing, and spiritual guidance. You can find it at the URL transmediumshipcourse.com, transmediumshipcourse.com. It's a very unique way of entering into the pathway, the sort of unique pioneered way of being that different mystics represent in different lineages, and how you can open those qualities yourself and then open yourself as a channel for more information and connection to the larger mysteries of life and beings on the other side. So, Karen, I'd love for you to share a little bit about this, your broader intentions first for the 7-week program, and then we'll give a little preview of what's coming in each module.
So my real desire and hope and intention for people in this is really to bring, I think it's easy to overlook somebody who was writing something in the 1300s and forget about it. And what I'm really trying to do with this is to bring some of that wisdom, some of that power, some of that inspiration from the last 2,000 years into our present life, because I feel like it's really important in this day and age that we can really appreciate what was said all those years ago, but we can contemporize it and we can experience it the way it is at the moment. And I think it's really important, when we look at the ecosphere, when we look at the divisions, when we look at wars, when we look at sickness, when we look at, separation and loneliness, having the experience and the understanding of how these mystics worked, what they learned in their experiences. I mean, it's just such a treasure to be able to access and to know that their teachings are still present, and that we can access those teachings and then learn how to embody them. That's a really important thing. So what I'm hoping to do in this course is move through 7 different mystics, 7 different experiences, but to see how it starts to affect how people move in their life, how they are open to the world. It's amazing. It really can make you feel immediately calmer, it's the way as we move through them. And so what I want to be able to do is move people into these different experiences. Some people will really resonate with prayer. Some people will really resonate with healing. Some people will really resonate with poetry. Some people will resonate with dance, or some people will resonate with speaking or writing. And so it's really a way of introducing this old, profound wisdom into our contemporary life in a way that we can actually then bring it into, embody it in our being and live with it in a very contemporary way.
So module 1 is called Explore Mindfulness and Zen to Unlock Your Mystical Mind.
That really helps us just get settled into a state of mindfulness, into a state of surrender. So really that class really lays the foundations for all of the practices, the energetic practices, the emotional and mental practices that we're going to be building on as we go over the subsequent weeks.
Module 2, Practice Trance Healing with Edgar Cayce to expand your healing powers.
So we've had a taste of Cayce, which of course we'll expand upon as we get into that class. We'll have a longer practice there. It's a beautiful practice to get started with because it really helps us still the mind and learn to make that very radiant connection with the power of without the mind interfering. So it's a beautiful way of laying the foundations and the framework to really help us begin to very easily flow into these mystical states of awareness.
Module 3, Engage in Prayer to Channel Divinity with Hildegard von Bingen.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, we work with Hildegard's original music on this as well, which is absolutely beautiful. She's an amazing character. We also, with it, reframe prayer. So we're not using prayer to beseech or ask for forgiveness. We are using prayers to find this equality within, something that we can then offer back. So it's a really nice way of being able to blend the spirit within with the spirit without as well, through prayer.
Module 4, Learn to Trance Speak with Meister Eckhart.
Mm. So Meister Eckhart gave these very profound sermons. So what we're going to do in this is start to move into the altered state. I'll teach all the participants how to actually start to work with trance speaking, with speaking in the altered state, and then allow whatever wisdom wants to arise from within to be expressed. So that's a beautiful way, because that's a great way then also being able to take that inspiration out and offer it to the world.
Module 5, illuminate your life's path with a Hopi vision quest.
Yes, beautiful. The Hopis. I love the Hopis. And so what we're going to do with that, we're going to talk about the Hopi prophecy rock. We're going to talk about vision questing, and we'll do a sort of a prophecy journey in that for the self. Or for the world, it's really up to the participants. So we're going to be working with the Hopi music. We'll be working with a lot of shamanic drumming to really move into a vision quest, to receive some information to help the participant in their own lives. And also, if the person is open to it, to actually start to work within prophecy for the world.
Module 6, whirl your way to mystical wisdom with Rumi.
Beautiful. And this is a great fun class because we're going to learn about Rumi and to learn about the whirling dervishes. We'll do a little some whirling dervish work itself, just to start to see how movement and music can move you into these mystical states as well. And then we'll have some time to actually express whatever that experience was in form of free verse poetry.
And finally, Module 7, receive prophecies for personal and global guidance through Kabbalism.
So what we're going to do is we're going to work with the teachings of Abraham Abulafia, who will receive letters and words of the divine. And then it's a very complicated, but very, very enlightening practice of then being able to find these words and reflect on words, which is a very, very experimental class. So it's really interesting class to finish up on. But to have words then that are imbued with meaning that you yourself can find by being in the mystical states, and then take that with you as a mantra or as a word as you move then on throughout your life. That's a very sort of experiential, almost ineffable class to describe, so which is why it's last. But I do feel that the point of Abulafia's work is to really help us bring us into that real state of intrinsic ultimate connection.
Well, it's an amazing program, and it's really so cool to be able to open up these different mystical pathways and get the higher octave of trance mediumship and whirling dervish, and being able to sort of see each as a pathway to access our higher abilities as well. So again, there's more detail on all these modules at transmediumshipcourse.com, transmediumshipcourse.com. And even though we're going to be covering some terrain that goes into very more advanced terrain, there's no prerequisites, and you can really start where you're at. And Karen will lead you into the deeper practices and build upon what you've already learned. So a few other things that I'll share about the program. You get not only the 7 90-minute live sessions with Karen, you're also going to have recordings of both video and audio, as well as word-for-word transcripts to work with, study, and highlight. There's weekly exercises and practices for home. There's a Facebook community to support you and deepen your experience with community around the world, as well as small group time to connect with other participants. And on the page, you'll also see a number of extra bonuses that are designed to enhance your journey. There's a PDF from Karen called Till Death Don't Us Part, Chapter 1. I love that title. You want to share a little bit about that Chapter 1 from your book?
So yeah, I recorded this meditation for the participants specifically to help everyone check in with where they are at the moment, to identify where energy is flowing freely, where things are going well, perhaps where they've got great aptitude that they could expand upon, but also where maybe energy is stagnant or where there is something in need of healing. And it helps to identify those places so that we can then sit and reflect and meditate and hold healing space for those places. So I've recorded that to help guide people through that process. And it does include a sort of at the end, sort of an interpretation of the experience to help people understand what they've experienced as they've been going through the healing process.
That's a wonderful extra bonus just there. And I also want to draw attention, there's one more bonus that is on the page, which is a special bonus you get if you sign up right away. We always like to do this as a way to give you a little extra encouragement to tune in now while you have the most information about this program and really see if it's the right next step for you. And if you do get the sense to move forward, you're going to get the video from Karen called Mediumship, Laying the Foundations. This is class one of another program that she teaches on her own site, and gives you really strong foundations for moving forward. And do you want to share a little bit more about that, Karen?
Yeah, so that's a sort of the introductory course to anybody interested in evidential mediumship and using these altered states to receive information from a discarnate loved one for somebody here. And so that first class is really talking about how we approach mediumship, how we approach working with the energy, how we approach receiving information and sharing information. So it's a nice, good, sort of gentle introduction to evidential mediumship specifically.
That's super helpful to have those foundations. Well, we've kept the investment for this really exciting program very accessible. It's just 3 payments of $128, or you save 10% when you pay in full upfront of one payment of $349. The course is going to start July 2nd and run Tuesdays at 1 Pacific, 4 Eastern. But even if you can't make the live times, you can still get the full value with the recordings, the transcripts, and the community as well. And there's some great testimonials from people who have previously studied with Karen, really wonderful work and really great testimonials from the benefits in people's lives. So again, you can find all the details at transmediumshipcourse.com, transmediumshipcourse.com, and you'll get that special bonus when you sign up today of Mediumship, Laying the Foundations, which is all about evidential mediumship. So Karen, what a delightful time with you. Anything that's still on your heart you want to share with folks who are considering going deeper into this really important work of mystical mediumship?
Yeah, I think that what people often ask me a lot, like, oh, what's the afterlife like? What's the spirit world like? And what I really do feel with these mystics is that people were walking the middle path. They were walking the path between the physical world and the spirit world. And I do feel at this point in our evolution on the planet that it's really more important than ever that we understand the power of the mystic, that we understand what the spirit world teaches us about how to be and how to treat the world, the physical world that we're in it at the moment, how we move through it, how we teach other people. I always say, if we were supposed to know everything about the spirit world, we'd be there. We're here, clearly we chose to be here in the physical world for a reason. And I think what's beautiful about the mystics is that they show us how we can use all of that inspiration and that wisdom and that power and use it to help us really live and be better humans while we're in our incarnate form.
Beautiful. Well, Karen, thank you so much for following your pathway out of the skeptical journalism into exploring this path of the mystical medium and really being opening these portals to our own higher realization and the translation of that into ways that can help other people as well. So thank you so much for today, and thank you so much for your upcoming program, and really an honor to be with you. And thank you all for joining. And if you choose to move forward in the next phase here with Karen, you are warmly welcome, and you're going to be in great hands, and you'll get the special Mediumship Laying the Foundations bonus if you sign up today. And again, that's all at transmediumshipcourse.com. So thank you so much.